my shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling great.
Hello BYWG tribe, this is Dr. Noah. We wanted to make you aware of our never before featured Product of the Month and newly released Book of the Month for April 2018. Keep in mind, all the links, discount codes, and special offers for the product and book will be listed in the show notes in iTunes, in our weekly newsletter, and on our website at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com at the Listen Now tab. Our product of the month is Mother Dirt. Mother Dirt is a line of biome-friendly personal care products focused on restoring and maintaining the delicate balance of your skin biome. Our book of the month is Breathe, the simple, revolutionary 14-day program to improve your mental and physical health by Dr. Belisa Vranich. Both Jasmina from Mother Dirt and Dr. Belisa discussing her newest book can be heard on the Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast during the month of April. Hello and welcome back to Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. My name is Dr. Noah DeCoyer and I am your co-host. Today I'm super excited to have Jasmina Aganovic from Mother Dirt as my guest today. Before we begin, I just want to note that all the appropriate website and product links for Mother Dirt will be in the show notes and on iTunes as well. Hello, Jasmina. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well, Noah. Thanks for having me.
All right, let me just do your the bio and then we'll get started right away. Jasmina is the president of Mother Dirt, a line of biome-friendly personal care products focused on restoring and maintaining the delicate balance of the skin biome. The technology is based off research from AOBiome, a biotech company focused on transforming human health through products that restore ammonia-oxidizing bacteria, which current hygiene practices have stripped from the modern microbiome. She is a cosmetics and consumer goods entrepreneur who received a degree in chemical and biological engineering from MIT, which means she's a genius. Her career path combined her technical background with roles at consumer brands like LVMH, Fresh, NutraClick, and Living Proof. All right, so this is my first question I ask all guests. Why don't you flesh that out a little bit? Tell the audience your backstory and how you end up where you are today.
Sure. Happy to. I think I was always engineering minded. I really enjoyed putting things together and understanding how things work. That sort of collided with an interest in chemistry that I started to get into without really knowing or labeling it as chemistry. And actually it was driven by a personal experience that I was having. I was struggling with my skin like many teenagers do in high school. And I started paying a lot of attention to the ingredients that were in products and understanding how they were put together. And that really started this element of curiosity for me. When I came to college, I knew that I wanted to stay in engineering, wanted to meld it a little bit with bio and chemistry, and MIT has a really phenomenal program in chemical and biological engineering. So that was ultimately what I chose to focus on. Leaving school, I did want to focus on personal care products. As I went through my undergraduate degree, I was fortunate enough to be exposed to a few different opportunities where my passion and interest for this industry was really ignited. I loved its creativity. I loved the innovation. I loved how quickly it moved. And so my first role out of college was at one of the leading companies in sort of the naturals category, a company by the name of Fresh that had been acquired by LVMH. And so this was really the beginning of my career. It started off in mostly R&D and the product development side, as most chemical engineers would, start off in. But I became very interested in how the entire puzzle fits together. How do you translate that scientific story into a message that resonates more broadly with consumers? And that was the space that I realized I really loved being in, sitting at that intersection of science and storytelling and figuring out how to be the translational piece between the two. So several of my other experiences related to that, and none more directly than my experience here at AOBiome and Mother Dirt, where I was essentially tasked with taking their technology that happens to be a live bacteria and figuring out how we can build a consumer brand around it, which as Mother Dirt today.
Now, Now, just business-wise, are they two separate companies? I just kind of popped in my head. So I just kind of understanding the whole structure of this. Is AOBiome and Mother Dirt two separate entities?
Yeah, great question. Technically, no, although we are having some conversations about changing that, and I can explain a little bit more about that. In 2014, when I joined AOBiome, the consumer-facing side was really a brand. It was an idea. It was an exploratory pipe dream for us. We genuinely did not believe that the amount of consumer interest was there that we ultimately ended up seeing. So we really just set it up as its own department within AOBiome. Department is a very elaborate word for really what was just like a team of 3 people at the time. But once we started to see the amount of public interest that we got, layered on by how interested the press was, it really showed us that this is a much bigger opportunity than we had thought. And more importantly, actually a really important message to be having conversationally. So perhaps in the future, Mother Dirt will be its own standalone business, but as of right now, it's still part of AOBiome.
Okay, so let me set the stage by asking you just a few words or concepts and how you would answer them to just move this conversation forward. The first would be, I guess it's 3. First would be the word clean and how that's shaped our modern hygiene habits. 2, your ideas on the microbiome, the gut microbiome, and skin microbiome. And then what exactly are ammonia-oxidizing bacteria?
Yeah, all really great questions. And a great sequence, by the way. So let's start with the word clean. If you or your listeners have not read the book, The Dirt on Clean, I cannot recommend it enough. It is basically the anthropological study of cleanliness. And it's a historical analysis of the perception of clean. And it's a fascinating read because you learn a lot about things that you didn't expect. But my big takeaway from reading it is that, believe it or not, most of our modern perceptions of what clean really is was largely shaped by religion through history. So that's sort of an interesting anecdote. But if your listeners are interested in sort of a book on the topic, that one I think is really amazing. But if you do look at the word clean, particularly in the last just 2 centuries alone, clean has been associated with the lack of pathogens, right? We developed the germ theory of disease, I don't know my history, but probably sometime in the 1800s or late 1700s, discovered bacteria that they were associated with disease, and that pegged our view of microorganisms basically for the next several hundred years. And we believed anything that was bacterial was definitely associated with being pathogenic and being harmful to us and causing disease. And this started, this had a cascade effect, I think, through a variety of industries, actually. And I'm going to speak more specifically about the personal care industry, where you wanted everything to be sans bacteria. So before we even get to antibacterial products and antibiotics and things like that, when you look at how an entire industry was built, from a regulatory perspective, the cosmetics industry requires preservatives in products so that bacteria do not grow in them. And that is a big pillar of the industry because we have always believed that bacteria are bad. Of course, with the recent research that's coming out, we realize that we only were looking at a sliver of the microbial world and that the rest of it is probably not pathogenic and in fact might be good for us. So it's causing this reevaluation to happen. However, this perception of cleanliness being something sans bacteria, something sans pathogens, has really driven how industries are built. And of course, some of the products that we interact with, everything as like minor, I would say, as preservatives in our product, but major like antibacterial products, and of course, the pervasive use of antibiotics. So I think what we're trying to do as a company, or the conversation that we're trying to trigger through conversations exactly like the ones that you and I are having now, is reevaluating what clean really means. Because we've certainly deviated from clean coming with healthy, right? We've believed that, okay, if we get rid of all the bacteria, we'll be super healthy. And we certainly have not ended up in that place. And so I think that that's causing this semi-philosophical conversation of what is clean, basically your first question.
Second question was skin microbiome versus gut microbiome. I mean, because essentially all we are is a collection of biomes, right?
Right, right.
So, so what's the interaction, the play? I mean, your mother dirt, AOBiomes, they're really focused on your skin microbiome, correct?
That's right. So, I'll start off by saying that there's a lot that we don't yet know. I don't even know that we're at the point where we know what we don't know, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
However, what we are realizing is that there are more and more parallels between all of the different ecosystems of the body. So the most common one that is referenced both in the literature and in the public, and is probably more at a conversational level, is the gut microbiome. That's become very common knowledge now. And so we have learned that the gut microbiome, that diversity, seems like diversity is really good. We don't yet understand what the roles of all of the different microorganisms are, and we certainly don't understand what a quote unquote ideal profile is, or if such a thing even exists. But diversity is good and balance is good, and we certainly need certain types of bacteria to help keep that balance. The same is true for the skin. Studies, and we have not done these studies, but there have been groups that have done studies indicating that Aboriginal tribes had much greater diversity on their skin's ecosystem, and this was associated with, and the link between the two still needs to be explored and understood, but this was associated with virtually no presence of inflammatory skin disorders or diseases or sensitivities, virtually no presence of it, which is ludicrous when you compare it to the pervasiveness of, modern society when we are quote unquote cleaner than ever. So there are a lot of parallels there, right? We're now learning, okay, well, diversity is good for the skin, and getting rid of a bunch of bacteria is actually probably not good, and it probably needs certain types of bacteria to keep the balance. So there are a lot of very similar parallels, despite the fact that they are very different ecosystems. The types of microorganisms that are able to survive in each of them are very different. Very likely the roles within each of them are very, very different. So there's still a lot more that needs to be learned, but the high level premise of how they function as an ecosystem, there's several parallels. And so I'll go to the third question that you listed, because this is a nice segue. We've learned with the gut that having certain types of bacteria, and I know that it's like up for debate, but generally speaking, eating sauerkraut or yogurt or other bacteria-rich foods has been associated with a more balanced digestive system, or a better functioning digestive system. So ammonia-oxidizing bacteria, so AOB as we call them, from the studies that we've done, seem to play that very same role. So having a balancing, peacekeeper-like effect on the skin's ecosystem. It's referred to in the literature as a keystone species, which means that it needs to be present in very minute amounts, only in minute amounts, in order to have the effect that it does. It's actually a soil-based bacteria. And so it exists everywhere that a nitrogen cycle is taking place, which means it's present virtually anywhere you have nature. So in water systems, in soil, even at the bottom of glaciers, you will always find this bacteria. The only place that there is the beginnings of a nitrogen cycle but no completion of it is modern human skin. And if you look at how we as human beings once lived, we were part of the environment. We were spending time outdoors. We were walking in lakes and rivers and streams. We were naturally inoculating ourselves with this bacteria. However, as we've separated ourselves from the outdoors and we've introduced all of these, cleaning products into our lives, we've lost it from our ecosystem. So the hypothesis that we're exploring as a company is, what happens both from a cosmetic and a therapeutic standpoint when we restore this bacteria, this peacekeeper bacteria, to the skin's ecosystem.
So when we're looking at the face and the skin microbiome, what products are typically damaging to this specific ammonia oxidizing bacteria?
We found that surfactants and preservatives are the two classes that are the worst or the most aggressive on this bacteria. And to get a little bit more specific there on the surfactant piece, surfactants are the things in our products that make them lather. Not all surfactants are created equally. Certain ones like SLS and SDS, which I think are already in the public domain as being really harsh and really strong, those are definitely super toxic to the bacteria. To give you a very specific example, if you coated yourself with our bacteria and then took one shower with a body wash that contained SLS, all the bacteria would be gone in just that one shower. So they're very sensitive when it comes to surfactants. So it isn't so much about the products; it's a little bit more about the ingredients that are in the products. Right. Harsh surfactants, preservatives, which unfortunately are in a lot of the products that sit on store shelves. And also, I think the excessiveness of the products that we use. I think, we've cultivated these very elaborate hygiene routines, which I think is great for us, but we've always approached it because we believe that it will make us cleaner, look better, healthier, and all of that, and it hasn't really gotten us to that point. So we have these very elaborate routines, particularly women, unfortunately, that I think have contributed to potentially the lack of diversity and also effects on our skin that we maybe haven't thought about before.
I just had an incredible conversation, and these two podcasts will probably come out back to back, which is kind of great, with Zach Bush, who created the Restore supplement, and he has to be careful with what he states and claims. But one thing he can say for certain is that glyphosate is a Roundup is extraordinarily damaging to our microbiome. Any research there saying that's, and I'm sure it does, but that it affects the skin microbiome as well?
Oh, that's interesting. We haven't tested that or looked at that specifically, so I really can't speak to that. I think the more important thing that he is getting at, though, is that if we do look at our body like an ecosystem interacting with the environment around us, our environment has a much bigger impact on us microbially than maybe we had initially thought. We build our microbiome and potentially our immune system at a very young age by interacting with the world. A lot of people now think that little kids start to put things in their mouths as a way to, basically build up their immune system. So our environment does have a big impact on us, but it goes beyond just the way that we think about us inhaling things or things affecting our organs. There's this invisible ecosystem that we now know of as the microbiome, which some people are even calling as like the next organ system, that environmental components, whether it be what he had mentioned or other elements that definitely do seem to affect it.
Now, Mother Dirt creates products both that are basically skin microbiome safe, meaning they don't damage the microbiome, and you also have sprays that contain these ammonia-oxidizing bacteria. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, and I've used them all. I don't use them all the time constantly. So I guess my question to you is if somebody wants to try this product out or they want to use it, how beneficial is it if you're using the ammonia oxidizing spray but not necessarily using the wash, or vice versa? Like, any kind of sense on how that whole dynamic would work?
Yeah, great question. So I'll start off with the spray. So our AO Plus Mist is the only product that we have in our line that has an actual live culture of these ammonia oxidizing bacteria. And I like to point that out because there's, I think with all the interest now in probiotics, there are brands and companies that contain quote unquote probiotics in their product, but it's not actual live organisms. It doesn't mean that the formula is not a good formula. It just is not an actual probiotic. So it's a bit of a misnomer. We went through great lengths from a manufacturing perspective to make sure that we could have an isolated live culture in a product that folks could use. So this product is something that you would spray on your skin. And we really only view it as part of the solution to what we're seeing happen, right? Being too clean, using too many products. we as a company are not trying to get people to abandon their modern hygiene routines. We're not trying to get people to stop showering. We're not trying to get people to stop using soap. We are, conditioned as human beings that this is like part of modern living. And actually, what we are trying to do instead is have a conversation about what clean means, and reintroduce this idea of bacteria being something that's good for us, but also see if we can introduce the microbiome as a criteria for cosmetic and personal care formulation, right? Cosmetic chemistry has come such a long way in being able to create luxurious formulas, efficacious formulas, and so on and so forth. And thankfully, with the natural product movement, there's a lot of interest in making sure that things are more sustainable, that the effects on the human body from a health perspective are much better understood, and so on and so forth. We want to introduce the microbiome as a piece of this puzzle, not only because we believe that it will do better for people's skin and solve some of the issues that are out there, but because we believe that this is the future of how things are going. So the mist is part of the solution, right? Restoring something that we've lost. But our biome-friendly products, which we put through a formulation and a development process, which we can talk about later, is the other part of the solution, which we view as complementary and just as important, right? We don't want you to stop taking showers. We don't want you to stop using the products you love, but we do need to think about formulating products differently so that we aren't creating this cycle. So to give you a very specific example, the studies that we've done, we have found that if people take water-only showers while they're using our mist, the bacteria are going to sustain for at least 7 days. The idea with using our biome-friendly products is that they're not going to affect the bacteria at all. So as long as you're replenishing, your culture is going to be able to continue growing and stay on your skin. And hopefully we can create a basic daily routine for users such that all of the products that interact with their skin have a neutral effect on their skin microbiome.
Those are great questions. And what I've learned very quickly from you and from your company is that you guys are working really hard to have hardline data to defend and support what exactly you're trying to put out into the marketplace, which is unbelievable.
Well, it's important, right? If this is a new field and it's a nascent field, I think that we, along with other people that are in the space, view it as a part of responsibility to do right by it, because if there's anything funny going on, you really could set the entire field back by several years. And I think that if that happens, we lose, and that we is not us as a company. I genuinely believe that we is human beings, right? The amount of, frankly, not to be dramatic, but really if you have been the person in this position, if you are struggling with extremely sensitive skin or some of the issues that are on the rise today, this affects your self-esteem and your life perspective so dramatically. And you will hear the saddest of stories, and dermatologists are running out of approaches. So it's important. It's important that we do it right, and it's important that we make sure that it's scientifically validated.
I couldn't agree more. Now, there's a body wash, face wash, and then the mist. Do I have the right Are there other products? Am I missing something? A moisturizer, maybe? Am I missing?
Yeah, you have most of them. So our mist is the one that contains the live culture. And then our biome-friendly products, so the ones that don't contain the live culture but are formulated in a specific way to be compatible with the skin's ecosystem. We have 3 products there. The first is a cleanser. So this is something that could be used on the face and the body. It has a great sort of foaming texture. Then we have a shampoo, and then we have a moisturizer as well. A little bit of a funny story here, but we have a shampoo and we don't have a conditioner. And the frank reason for that is because creating a biome-friendly conditioner is presenting to be a lot more challenging than we had expected from a formulation and a biome-friendly criteria perspective. So we are working on new products, but it's an entirely new way of formulating. So we have to be patient with ourselves.
Have you actually defined what biome-friendly is? Is there like a definition for you guys for what that means?
I'm really glad you asked that. And I'm very, I'm happy to be honest here in saying that we have defined it, but we want this definition to continue growing and evolving with the research and the work that we, and hopefully through partnerships partnerships with others are able to do. So to tell you how we've defined it so far, ammonia-oxidizing bacteria, by everything that is currently known in the microbiome space, are among the most sensitive of organisms. So if we take the most sensitive of organisms and use them as a very high bar for a litmus test and basically say, okay, if we test things and they are not toxic to this very, very fragile, very sensitive microorganism, then chances are it's not going to be toxic or harmful to other beneficial organisms that exist on our skin. And so that's the statement that we've made there. We've built on it in the following ways. So initially in our early days, we would screen ingredients. And then if the ingredients were screened and passed, then we thought, okay, great, we can just use these ingredients as part of a toolkit and develop formulas. But then chemistry comes in and you realize, if you use 10 ingredients that are all biome friendly, when you put them together, the final formula might not be biome friendly, which is really interesting. So there we have to start to toggle with quantities, concentrations, and how we put together formulations. So we've needed to build on our definition from there. However, this starts to get more complicated and gets into issues that we are going to be dealing with very soon and have already started conversations with. How do you think about leave-on versus wash-off products? We have an assay that we put things through to test for this toxicity. How should the assay change? How should it evolve? How can we best represent its interaction with the skin? So these are all very real questions that we're dealing with right now, and is something that we hope to be able to build on to truly infuse biome friendly with a full meaning and knowledge and definition. But we recognize that that's going to take time.
Yeah, I think as a designation, it would be so cool. One of the products or facial products or body care products and companies that I love that I've interviewed is Alatura and Anti-Nilo. I mean, I'd love for them to have like a biome friendly designation to their products, because I think they're fantastic. They're in most cases almost all natural, and I think it's a great avenue to explore further for sure.
Oh yeah, we've definitely had the conversation here about doing certifications, and I think the reason we've held off on that now is because if we get a formula from someone and it fails, we should know why, but I think we're not comfortable saying we understand the full breadth of reasons for why a formula would fail in a way that we could constructively give them feedback on how to tweak things, because this is so early on, it's so nascent in its development. But we've had so many conversations about that, so it's really exciting for me to see your mind go there as well.
Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't mean a product is necessarily bad. It could be like 98% good, and it's just
Sure.
like a little tweak there. So that's interesting. So if I was wondering if I could ask you to peek into the future of Mother Dirt. Are there any products that are really close to being brought to market that you could speak to, or something that you're really interested in that you might like to see come out in the near future?
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, the conditioner is really important to us, so that's been one of the ones that we've been working most steadily on, and we hope to be able to launch that soon. One of the other ones that's really interesting for us to tackle, and we're very early on in this, but it is an SPF. So when our theme for product development is basic daily essentials is how we refer to it. We want to make sure that we can build out a very basic personal care routine before we start to get into more nuanced products. And an SPF really falls into this category. So that we believe is an important one for us to do because of how important sun protection is, but also from a basic needs standpoint, it will be a challenging formulation endeavor, but some that we think we have good approaches for.
Yeah, let me pick your brain on that a little bit, because I'm very careful. I try to use the least amount of suntan lotion I can.
Yeah.
That's like my goal every year. Is like I know I need a little bit, and then once I get to my skin, I tan very nicely, fortunately, and I don't have to use much at a certain point, or if that at all. So I'm very careful. Does the zinc oxide and titanium dioxide, is that microbiome unfriendly?
So from what we know, physical mineral blockers are not toxic to the bacteria. However, they are historically very challenging to work with from a formulation perspective.
Yes.
So we're looking to see if we can work with them in a way that could create a formula that has a great consistency to it that people could still use. So yeah, good question. So we're thinking along those lines.
Because yeah, my wife, kids, and me, I don't necessarily always like to look like a white ghost when I'm outside. So we've found other
Right.
suntan lotions. I'm gonna say a name just because, but like Aubrey Organics makes decent ones,
Sure.
but I don't really know how dangerous they are or not. I know that zinc and titanium are really on the high safe end in terms of chemical wise, but I would really love for you guys to make something and make it soon.
Yeah, thank you. Well, you are not the first to request it. It's been one of the most frequent requests for us by our users. And I'll say close to half of our users are men, which is really has been a really interesting thing for us, or definitely was in the beginning. But certainly we found that people are approaching this from a health and a lifestyle angle, and they're not really viewing it as pampering skincare. It's serving a much more utilitarian function in their routine. So we have a large portion of men that are using the product, and definitely families. So it's been a household thing for folks. So that's been really thrilling for us to see that adoption, that sort of adoption trend.
Yeah, on a personal side, I have two sons, a almost teenager and an 8-year-old. And as my oldest son ventures into the teenage years and hormonal changes and stuff and skin changes, as I'm sure you're aware of,
Yeah.
he's developed a little bit of like a blackhead issue. And one of the strategies we've used to kind of help resolve that in the best way we know how is through Mother Dirt, for sure.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, well, keep me posted on how that turns out for him. I would really love to hear.
I will. Now, last question I have for you, and it's kind of a fun question that I ask all my guests or all our guests, and it's basically, what does the day in the life of Jasmina look like from waking to sleep?
Ha. Wow. Okay. It varies. I think many entrepreneurs would sort of understand the workday at least. But let's start with the morning. So I wake up. I try and meditate in the mornings. It happens maybe a few times a week. If I don't meditate, I try and read a book, even if it's just for about five minutes, just because I don't know, it as weird as it might be to say, it sort of just grounds me for the day. Then I make some coffee and I try and go through emails. I try not to get sucked in, but mostly just to make sure that my priorities are set for the day. Then I get ready and I head to the office. And then what happens in the office really just depends on what's going on. Currently, I'll say that we're doing a lot of planning and strategic thinking about the brand and the direction that we want to take it in. We have had such tremendous success internationally that was not part of our original plans. And so that's forced us to take a few steps back in our approach and say, okay, how can we take advantage of all of the interest that we're getting from overseas? So recently it's been definitely been a lot of planning. Other thing that's happening recently is migration onto a few different platforms. So we're moving on to a new ERP and a new sort of website backend, all very sexy, fascinating things, but important to running the business. Lots of discussions with our fulfillment center about prepping for scale with them. So that's been mostly my day. But I will say probably my most favorite part of the day is actually when everyone leaves the office, even though I'm close with my team. But there's just something about being in a quiet office. I typically put on music and jam a little bit myself as I hammer through emails and actual things that I need to wrap up or do that day, or follow-ups. And then I head home and have dinner with my now husband. We typically catch up catch up on our days. We have a little bit of cheese and crackers or some sort of snack. We might have a glass of wine or bone broth we've been into recently. And then we make dinner and we might watch something or read. And then we try and get to bed around 11 o'clock. How's that for a routine?
That sounds Fantastic. So do you have any last words for our audience?
Let me think. I even though I like to be very transparent about, yes, I'm very moved by the work that we are doing, and I find a lot of genuine personal fulfillment in how important of a mission and impact I believe we will have on people's lives. But, setting all of that aside, when we start to think about like basic brand agnostic changes that people might be able to make, it's quite easy, actually. Really just reevaluate the number and the extent to which you use certain products. So a great example of this is, we're taught to lather, rinse, repeat. No scientific proof for actually needing to lather, rinse, and repeat. So I would sort of abandon that as a habit or a trend. No need to really lather up head to toe. Really just focus on the areas that truly get dirty. Do you actually need to use certain products? Just sort of questioning certain parts of your routine. Very often people find that, the things that they thought that they needed, they don't actually. Their skin does just fine. Their hair does just fine. So have a little bit of like a provocative or a thought-provoking like session with yourself when you look at your routine, because small changes like that actually are very easy to start and can have a big impact. So to the degree that that's useful to anyone, I'll put that out there.
That's great. Thank you for your time today. I'm sure our audience will get a lot out of it. I'm sure a lot of people will want to use the product, and they'll have special links and discount codes for to be able to check Mother Dirt out. So thank you very much, Jasmina. I had a great time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Noah. And last thing I'll add is really just spending time outdoors. A big part of our values is, we sort of got disconnected from all of that, and there is actually an important, potentially health tie to being outdoors. So that's the other important one that I'll put out there. But really enjoyed chatting with you as well, Noah. I really appreciate the time and the interest in the work that we're doing.
Yeah, as a side, I echo the spending outdoors. We live in the same geographical climate, and man, I can't wait. I cannot wait to mid-March to get into my garden and to get into my dirt. And anyway,
yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Noah DeCoyer, your host, and you are listening to the Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. If you'd like what you've heard today, please share this with your friends and encourage them to subscribe on iTunes. Leaving a review and a rating on iTunes helps us move up the charts and helps more people find us. You can subscribe to our incredible weekly email at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com. Thank you, and as my oldest son Hayden says, be awesome and never unawesome.